Okay, it's 6 o'clock, June 4th, beginning of the Finance Committee meeting. Got a couple of things on the agenda here, and before I start off, I see we got a couple of young members of the public, so if you have any comments, we usually say them before the end, but if you have anything you want to say now, or any questions you have now, we'll try to answer them for you. No? Okay, don't worry. If something comes to you, write it down. We'll get to you at the end. Okay? So to start, we have the agenda. If you haven't signed in for members of the public, please do so at the back. There's a sign-in sheet. Let's see. What else we got here? Okay. So we're going to start off with the 2015-16 budget discussion. I think this is on the agenda just because I want to make sure I'm clear on something, and if there's something that needs to be addressed, we address it through the committee of the whole meeting that's coming up, and certainly by the voting meeting at the end of the month. Mike Wolf, who's not here, he may show up, brought to my attention that there was a discussion at the Curriculum Instruction Committee concerning the number of potential furloughs for the school district for the next year, and that somehow the numbers that were being discussed at the C&I committee differed from what we had here at the Finance Committee. I haven't heard anything from anybody about anything about that would be different than what we had discussed here at this meeting in terms of the number of furloughs at the middle school, the high school, and at the elementary positions. I haven't seen any documentation showing anything different. I haven't received anything from our superintendent, from the building principals, or anything else that would change what we had originally discussed back at the end of April. So if there's some sort of documentation that's been published or something that contradicts what we discussed, can we share that with us so that we can talk about it and give some direction to the business office?
Yeah, let me just say, I wasn't at the CNI meeting either, but I talked to Mike a day or so after the committee of the whole meeting when he voted, or the voting meeting, when he voted no on the budget, and I said, I'm just curious, why'd you vote no? And he said, because of what had been discussed at the CNI committee meeting, and I said, well, you know, you didn't say anything during the voting meeting, so I'm not sure what the number differences are and what supports them.
Right. So, Dave, can you shed some light on that?
Well, what we, our recommendation, so we did make a recommendation for elementary school. We did not come up with a recommendation for middle school or high school. So our recommendation for the elementary, I believe, was to cut 5. Yeah.
Based on what?
Based on actually looking at it, actual class sizes going in from this year going into next year at each school.
So part of that,
I mean, is that information going to be shared? What I'm wondering is that information going to be shared with the other board members at some point, so we're looking at the same data?
Same data we want to take a bulk of looking at.
yeah, frankly, that's a real source of frustration from my perspective, because that was a glaring difference right away in that meeting. And
what was?
That what the amount of cuts, staffing cuts coming from the administration, their recommendation as to how many people we could actually furlough, and what was coming out of finance. And I said, whoa, there's a delta of like with 6 teachers or 5. Am I wrong, Dave? Correct.
Well, we had 8.
There's a total of 11. There was a total of 11 furloughs that were coming out of the finance committee, which was 1 from the middle school, which Jenny Rexroad had provided a PowerPoint presentation to the entire board, as well as the finance committee meeting. At the end of that, she says we can recommend 1 furlough for the middle school.
Right.
And then from the high school, we had Mr. McKnight here at the finance committee meeting, and we asked him point blank, how many teachers are you thinking you could furlough? And he said 2. That was the answer we got from him that night.
Well, I think there's you can have a conversation about that.
Yeah, that's...
Well, we could talk about that, but he's not here to talk about it. So maybe that needs to come up at the committee of the whole meeting. But the discussion revolved around the elimination of these 34 classes with less than 10 people, in addition to alternating, I'm just going with the notes that I had written down at the meeting, alternating the course offerings like you do at a university. So in his words were, we wouldn't offer European history every single year. We would offer European history every second year, as an example. Okay, and I don't know how many other classes you would do that with, But that way, instead of having 11 people sign up for one class every year, you might have 25 or 30 sign up for that class every 2 years.
Right.
So it's a full class.
Right.
And based on that, he gave us a number of 2. Okay, so that was the 1 in middle school. That was where we got to the 2 in the high school, and then there was 8 at the elementary level.
I think that's a big difference.
Well, and now I asked Lauren what he had received, if anything, and he got a list from Mary Beth Torsha of 11 names. So they correspond with the numbers that we're talking about. Okay, so
Because, when the last time we voted on the budget as it was.
yeah, but
So,
I guess what I'm wondering was if that had changed, why hadn't anything else changed? So, and it's okay for things to change. I guess my frustration is as a board member, I'm sitting there at a committee of the whole meeting and a finance committee.
I guess
voting meeting.
shame on myself and Brian. We were hoping the chair would address it,
yeah.
but he voted against the recommendation, so maybe he didn't want to bring it up. So,
Well-
but shame on us for not bringing it up.
Okay, so let's just start from the beginning then. What is, the discrepancy then seems to be, well, we'll let Mr. McKnight explain what's going on at the high school, okay? Because he can obviously speak for himself there. With the elementary positions, what's the difference between 5 and 8? How are you guys getting the differences there between them?
I have,
One of them was functional class size. I know at AEC, the classrooms themselves seemed to be very crammed. So that was one of the issues that was brought up, if I recall.
And I don't know if this is out there or not, but I understand that when we did the numbers originally, we took class number of kids divided by class size and came up with teachers. Right?
Yeah.
If the classrooms aren't situated right, or whatever, what would help me is if I saw, okay, if they say that they can only cut 5 teachers, not 8. If they put the classes, I mean not the kids, but okay, there's going to be 4 classes here in first grade, and there's this many kids. And then I can at least see, and maybe that was done and I don't have it, or I missed it in an email or whatever, but...
Yeah, I'm really lost on
You know what I
this
mean?
lack
Then
of-
I
Look,
could
I've gone
say-
through all my emails,
Well, that's what I'm
all
saying,
of my
I'm trying
emails,
to-
and I haven't seen anything about this.
Then I could say, okay, all right, well, this class has, these two rooms have 20, and we say we can have 23, why do they only have 20, or whatever. And then they could say, well, the classroom isn't situated. But I don't know that. So I don't know how I make a decision either way.
Okay, so let me forward this to you guys. This was sent to the curriculum committee by Mary Beth.
Yeah, because we have another curriculum committee member here who can chime in a little bit.
And I guess I just ask going forward that whatever the committees are getting, I mean, here we try to make sure everybody gets what we're discussing about the rest of the board, whatever documents that Lauren's
I do
providing
hear
to
you.
us.
I just want to comment on
Yeah.
that because I think that we start weighing in on the minutia in
Yeah.
the committee, and we kind of haven't forwarded those documents to you. We thought it would be based on our recommendation because we were pouring through the minutia.
Yeah.
And we got, I don't know, what was it, a 17-page document from Jenny Rexford about the classes and the utilization.
Yeah, I got a PowerPoint from her
We
on
got a
that.
lot of stuff. We'll be glad to get it to you, but I think the long and short of it is we went through the practicality of, what sizes we wanted for each grade, and those were side by side with the administrator's recommendations, and the recommendations are that from committee that we only found.
Yeah, but I still haven't even seen.
Well, that's fine. I mean, if you want to hash that out now, we need to bring that to the full board. We were hoping that the board would take a different direction and maybe start looking at the sports program or fat elsewhere before we cut any more staffing.
Right. So I think I'm with Tamara on this. Unless I can see for myself the data and how these numbers are coming together, I don't know how to formulate an
I'm
opinion.
sure we
on
can
it.
get that to you.
So
Yeah, I'm pretty, and I apologize because I didn't know you guys didn't have that, and
Don't
I
have
was hoping
anything.
that the chair would have pushed that out because those presentations were given to all of us, and I'm sure I could dig through my emails here and find
They just
them.
forwarded it.
yeah, just forward whatever you
Yeah.
guys have to the rest of the board.
And I'm
Yeah, because
not,
that was really a source of pain for me to see such a wide delta. I mean, in real numbers, we're talking about, $500,000 plus. So that's a big swing, big impact on our budget. So I was kind of frustrated that those two numbers weren't lining up, and then now to find out that you guys don't have the information we were given.
Right.
So
The last time I heard about classroom constraints was from Anne Marie Trainer, and that was before I was on the board.
wow, okay, yeah.
Well, and the chart I just sent is really, it's with our guidelines. It's not, that's what it is, that's what it is, so.
So
And
using, hold it, isn't that, so let me just back up. So using our guidelines and the numbers that are in our guidelines, I think that's how we came to the first set of numbers, correct? We used a total enrollment and we used our guidelines to determine the number of teachers that were going to be required.
So,
Yeah,
Okay.
Which of course
Just
was
a
not
straight
a
division.
proper way to do it.
but it was a good
Well,
starting
it's a starting
point.
point, right?
Yep, yep.
And so the second piece then is, if I'm hearing it correctly, is that you may have not all those, it's not obviously because those students are being distributed amongst two different buildings, right? More of those students may be in one building than another, right?
Well, three buildings and obviously by grade.
Right.
Andrew, I had done it by building. The biggest difference between the 5 and the 8 was based on the projections.
Mhm.
We had enrollment projections, and the 5 is based on current enrollment because the enrollment the past couple of months has not declined like it was declining.
But what's the enrollment for next year?
Well, that's the question.
Well, they should,
If you
enrollment should be going on right
If you
now.
use current enrollment, it's probably closer to 5, maybe 6 on current enrollment. If you use projected enrollment for next year, it's closer to 8.
yeah, but that's what I'm saying is people are already enrolling their kids for school next year, right?
Right.
When does that end?
Well, that's going to end at probably all the way up to the end of summer.
Yeah, but the majority of people enroll by what time?
All the way through the summer.
Yeah,
I would say the 2/3 are probably enrolled by now,
yeah,
and we usually get another third during the summer months.
right.
And that's what my concern is, and I did do a presentation on the classrooms at the curriculum meeting. When we're looking at 5 of the 8 coming out of my building, we're now driving class sizes to 26 and up, and that's a big
Well,
concern.
we want to make sure that the class sizes stay within our policy guidelines. So, I think the board's in agreement on that. So, is it possible for you to forward that presentation? Is that, Dave, is that what you forwarded to us? His presentation?
What I forwarded was the chart that I think all the elementary teachers put together from Mary Beth, showing you the number of kids moving up the grade, okay? And then it has options. Option 1, this number section is option 2, this number section is an option 3 with this number section. So it breaks it out into actual, by the grade and by the school.
Yeah, I guess what I would ask the administration to do, this is just my personal preference, is I don't want to base my assumptions, let me put it that way, based on our enrollment as of today, because our enrollment for the last 4 years, 5 years has been going down. And every year we've done this, and historically, we said, well, no, it's going to be this for the fall. We get to the fall, and it turns out to be something significantly less.
But you've seen my monthly reports that stay the same.
Yeah, but,
And that's, the big unknown is kindergarten and K to 1. Those are the 2 big unknowns because we have a lot of students come back for first grade. We don't know how many that will be, and we certainly don't know exactly how many kindergarten we're going to have until all the registrations are in. Those are the 2 big unknowns.
correct.
And the only thing I would
Excuse
throw
me
out on
one
that-
second, because I don't have enough of these for everybody. Using current enrollment, you would lose 3 at AEC and 2 at MEC BEC. That's current enrollment from a month ago. Now, that's not projected enrollment for next year.
And that's what we had planned, was exactly what you just said.
Yeah, but again, that's on current enrollment.
And I'll be honest, I don't have a problem sitting here in August and adding teachers if we have to add teachers.
Right, I don't have that problem either.
But I can guarantee you in August, we're not going to cut teachers if the enrollment's short.
You can't.
Because you can't, because the kids,
Right.
School year's already started.
Right, so if the first meeting in August, we've got enrollment that exceeded what we thought, and we have to bring a teacher back.
That's easy.
We can get a teacher back. But once, if you keep those teachers and you don't really need them in August, you're gonna have,
And the problem is you get to October or December or February and you really realize you don't need them. You have them until June. So, all right, well, forward what you have over to the rest of us so that we can see it and digest it, because obviously it's going to be something we're going to be talking about on Monday.
Yeah, I apologize. I actually thought that we all had that information already.
Look, I mean,
Mr. Miller, your presentation, did you forward it to all of us?
Sure.
I'm not sure I have it.
my suggestion would just be that, look, everybody can do what they want, but I always try to make sure that everybody's CC'd on those types of things. And if there's some Q&A going on back and forth, just keep people in the loop. Some people may not care and may not want to open up the files and look at them. Other people might not get into the weeds and really understand the issue for them to make a good decision at a board meeting. So it may just save a little bit of time. I know you guys are weeding in the minutia and trying to knock out all that minutia so you can make a recommendation. But at the same time, I don't know, somebody who's not in the committee may say, well, wait a minute, what about this, what about that? Or I disagree with the assumptions, whatever.
And two, we have to have some crossover like this in committees. When we're getting down to budgeting like this, we should all be popping in on each other's discussions. As curriculum committees here, perhaps the finance committee should have came to the last curriculum committee meeting.
Well,
I would have if I could have.
Yeah, I would have if I could have also,
And,
but.
and we're not discounting your recommendation, but in the same way, the finance committee is supposed to be looking
I
at
understand
it.
that.
So.
Well, there was no recommendation made at the meeting. At the voting meeting, we didn't have any recommendations.
No, that's what Dave just said.
No, I just thought
The
Carol
curriculum
was earlier.
committee came to a
They
conclusion,
had
but they never told anybody else.
No. All right, no, it's not a big deal. I just want to make sure that I'm glad you guys are here and we can hash
I think
it
it
out.
is though. There's a
If
lot.
we know what
That's a
you're
lot of
basing your
teachers. That's a big
recommendations
difference.
on, then
Well, we need to get to an answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got to somehow reconcile.
And it's a healthy process.
It always is.
It's going to be a healthy process.
Yeah, it always is.
I don't know if it'll make it easier or not, for helping us make decisions or not, but I think in the past budgets, did you guys break out like a bio, like a kind of like vote by the line item of, do we eliminate this teacher or this area?
program.
Well, what we did was it was by program or
Program.
position or something else. I think if we're just talking about these types of things as it relates to, I think where we're all in agreement that with a declining enrollment, we want to right size our staffing, right? Everybody's in agreement with that. The question is, what's the right size? And so I think that's just really a question of, the data speaking for itself. So what I'd like to see is, what is our enrollment for each building projected to be for September, October next year? And what are those sizes of those classes in the buildings? And if they're within the policy, then that's where I want to make sure that we're in the policy. If they're not, then that's a different story. We need to adjust accordingly. But I'm with Tamara. I think I'm in this position of, I've sat here too long and watched the enrollments decline, and then we're overstaffed for what we need for that budget year, and it's hundreds of thousands of dollars that add up year after year after year that, quite frankly, if it was sitting in our fund balance now, would be available for other things that we want to spend the money on, other program or other issues that people want to support. So,
And Brian, just to be clear, what Samara's saying is, if we were to issue furlough notices to 8 people, you could rescind 1, 2, or 3 of them.
Sure.
If we don't issue them, it'd be too late.
And that's one of the reasons I actually ended up voting on the preliminary one, because I thought, okay, we can repair that after the fact. And I'm still kind of blown away that we weren't sharing this information. I made it.
well, we'll fix that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've hired people when I was first year. We were hiring people in October, February, throughout the year, whenever the demand was. The administration would come to us and say, we need a half day teacher, we need a full-time teacher for this or that, and the board would vote on it, and we'd bring somebody in.
That's why I have fund balance.
That's why I have fun balance. Exactly right. Okay, so aside from that, the only other thing, I got an email that people had asked us, we hadn't looked at it in a couple of years as it relates to the budget, and right-sizing our budget is the number of aides that we have. And I don't know, Mary Beth isn't here to direct that question to. In the past, a number of years ago, we had looked at the number of aides, and we were way overstaffed with aides. And I mean, I think we scaled down by a dozen or more. And I don't know where we are with that now as it relates to the special needs kids in the schools and whether they're paired up appropriately or not, or I just don't know. So
Right.
I don't know if we can get that message out, so you guys can take a look at that by building and just let us know. Make sure we got the right staffing there as well, that all the IEPs and the 537s or whatever they are being covered appropriately, and if there's something that we have, if an aide's supposed to be working with 3 kids and they're only working with 1, is that something we need to look at?
Well, and typically 80 to 85% of them are one-to-one.
Yeah, absolutely.
However, they do help other kids. but
Sure.
They're technically one-to-one.
Yeah,
And then we have a small, at least in my building, we have a small allotment, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, of general building aides.
yeah, okay.
The rest are all one-to-ones.
And it may be as we left it. I don't know, but obviously as enrollments keep changing,
Right.
I think every year we need to kind of take a look and say, are we there? Are we where we're supposed to be? Special
Right.
education, the number of students there has been pretty consistent, even though we've had a declining enrollment. So maybe there's no change. It's been around 500 students overall in the district. So maybe there's no change there. But
I would say based on practical experience,
Yeah.
your adjustment in the past was pretty much right on.
yeah, okay.
It looks like we're covering everybody's needs.
Yeah. Do you think you could get something out to the board by Monday on that for your bill?
Should be able to, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And I don't know how we get the word out to the other building principals to do the same. Okay. Anybody else have any comments on budgetary items while we're still on that sort of agenda item?
Probably don't want to say it, but
Say whatever you like. That's why we're here.
uh,
I wouldn't have asked if I didn't want to hear it, Dave.
just thought maybe we should consider a wage tax increase,
Okay?
considering where projected fund balance is going to be in a couple of years. Yeah, maybe $250,000.
And Lauren, I thought at the last meeting we had, didn't you provide us with, on one of the spreadsheets, what different tax increases would look like at the bottom of one of those spreadsheets? I don't know which, yeah,
Here,
here it is.
here it is.
So
You can send them
is this the same one we had from before?
in. Well, this is the 17-18 quarter version, but it's the data you're looking for.
Was
I
that
think I have
emailed
this.
or just in hard copy?
I think we emailed everything around.
I thought so.
Usually
I was
we
trying to find it.
re-release all those things. And I tried putting dates on them because I've got so many of them here now.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
I want to make sure I'm looking at the right one. So this one did have on at the bottom of it, Dave, the different millage rates and required millage beyond the index to balance and those types of things. So with the value of a mill, you get a pretty good idea of what different,
Yeah, we're worried about $1 million for a mill. So that's-
right.
Correct.
All right, I don't want to take us in reverse,
Yeah, we do.
but I need some
We're
clarity.
confused.
I need some clarity on this. So, on the very top left-hand corner of this document, it says 3 retirees, 8 furloughed.
That's right.
So that's a total of 11, right?
That's exactly what we just discussed.
Right. Right. But if you drop down, it says 5 elementary, 1 middle school, 2 high school.
Correct.
It's the 8 furloughs, so 3 retirements already out.
Okay.
I
Oh,
think,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I would assume.
All right. So
8
okay.
total, okay.
But it's really 8
8?
elementary. If you,
No.
you're losing the positions, right?
Where are the retirees coming
Where
from?
the
I don't know where the retirees is coming from.
They're all at the elementary level.
Yeah,
Are they?
Three are out.
Okay.
yeah, they're all
Yeah.
3, I believe, in the
There's
same
8
place.
elementary
Right.
already.
So
So
I think
it's-
that might be
With the
where.
Mhm.
I'm sorry.
Well, that's what we just talked about. That's what we're trying to get to the bottom of.
Yeah.
That's going to be based on enrollments and where the students are in the buildings, right? And the data.
Yeah.
If we get good data, I think that's going to speak for itself.
Your preliminary budget includes 3 retirees out of elementary plus 5 additional elementary.
Yes. For a total
Total of 8.
Out of elementary.
Well, 8 out of elementary.
8, 1, and 2, so total of 11.
I think that's where the,
Well, I think what we're going to be talking about is the high school. Is it 2? Is it 1?
yeah, because
Right.
at one point said, I want to hire somebody.
Yeah, that's up higher administratively.
Oh, okay.
But I think the question is it 2, is it 1? I'm not sure, and he's not here to answer that question, so.
Okay.
And then the other one is, what are we doing with the elementary students and based on enrollments?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Well-
And what you see in here also is 17, 18 is where we have earmarked the potential closure of a building based on enrollments.
Yep.
And the tax increases illustrated here.
Well, what this does is it basically, the taxes are at the bottom, the second page, and what that shows you is use of fund balance going forward, and then what he shows is the value of a mill and the millage needed to basically not use any fund balance, correct?
Right.
So you could use up to a half a mil not to use any fund balance, you leave your fund balance where it is, or and so on and so forth. Or if you're going to go above the index, how many mils would you have to use to go above the index?
The fund balance is showing in 14, 15. Does that include, like I know we end up under budget, which is typically a good thing. Is that including what we're anticipating to be
This is our best guess where we're going to end.
where we're going to end? Okay.
Which is in about 3 weeks.
Right.
So it should be pretty darn close.
Pretty close, yeah. I just wasn't sure if that was based on, the budget that we passed last year.
No,
just
this
leaving
is,
that
this
alone.
is real-time work.
Okay.
Where we feel we're going to end. We're trying to keep as tight as we can. Because
See, my big concern is that 16, 17, when you're pulling out 2.2 million
Yeah.
and you can't raise the millage enough. I mean, you still have $890,000 left, but that's not really a whole lot.
Yeah, I hear you. My position on it is that, quite frankly, I think if enrollments keep doing what they're doing, we could be looking at potential closure sooner than 17, 18.
Right, I know we had the 2 budgets that were passed out the other.
And if you push that forward in a year, that has a dramatic impact on our overall fund balance
Right,
going
is that-
forward as well.
Then we're only $1 million, we're only tapping $1 million.
So that's about, what do we figure that was, like $600-something for a building closure?
Well, I think that's my question. The building closure
600.
looks like it's a little bit more than what we experienced in this building. Am I wrong, Lauren? How much money? You got 15
Position.
FTEs going for the building closure.
yeah, that was just a number.
Right. Then what did that equate to, about $1 million?
15 furloughs.
Yeah.
Well, it took it down, it would be closer to $1.5 million.
Yeah, I think that number is maybe a little, do you think that's too much to expect?
Depends on the size of the building.
That,
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm concerned we might be anticipating too much savings from that. And then,
We can certainly look at that. I mean, I think the issue is you're identifying a building principal, secretaries, nurses, librarians, whatever else goes along with that. Administratively, that's where most of the savings comes from. It's not coming from your staffing, because your staffing is based hopefully on enrollments. You're going to get some consolidation and efficiencies because students that might be here would now be in a different building, so the classes would stay a little bit more stable. But I think that's a de minimis impact on those things. Most of the savings for this building when we closed it came from the administrative side. So,
I have 2 comments. May I?
absolutely.
Okay. One of the drastic measures that we didn't develop completely in curriculum, and I guess we could direct the administration to start looking at that, is the changing the middle school to the junior high model.
Mhm.
We didn't want to go there because we have such a good setup there. Everybody likes it, it's very productive by all accounts, it's a good middle school. But that would be a drastic measure that I believe was commented that there would be some savings. So we didn't develop that. And then something came out in policy was about the sports program. I'm not sure if Ms. Goss ever got any numbers to you. Wikipedia calls our sports program extensive and costly. And I noticed that in other
Who calls
schools. Wikipedia. It's just Wikipedia.
They call our program or all
The
schools?
district offers a wide variety of clubs, activities, and an extensive,
I see.
costly sports program. Now, just for kicks, I Googled around and saw that there were other schools described exactly like that. It's some sort of template wording. But there were others that weren't. The word costly was not in there to describe their sports program. And in policy, okay, it's Wikipedia. For what it's worth, to bring the discussion back local, we've been talking about the fundraising policy and how it's on steroids, basically, and people are raising funds for things that perhaps the school district should be paying. But we don't know. There's just no controls right now. Everybody's just raising money, spending, who should be buying what. And the policy is looking at how much, is falling on the backs of the kids that have the sort of, unwritten obligation to constantly raise funds for their extracurriculars, for their sports, different sports. So it did come out that there's some budgeting in the sports program with travel and scheduling and supplies that Ms. Goss said that she would work up some numbers and give us numbers exactly what. I did expect her to report to this committee with the numbers. So is that something we could pursue? That she was actually going to, she couldn't provide us the numbers and what we were providing each team. And I don't know if she manages extracurriculars, like who's getting what from us and how much, from the context of, well, should the school be picking up more? But really, we don't know. I mean, the district, but really, we don't. The point is, we don't know what's being paid for and how much of it, and there's no checks on that.
Yeah, so my recollection is we spend about $500,000, a little less than $500,000 a year on sports. Extracurriculars altogether.
Now, I just saw something from your office, Mr. Small. I thought it said $200,000. That I didn't have a chance to study it, but I looked down at the bottom real quick. It said $200,000 in the extracurricular.
What was
No?
the report?
Okay. Well, maybe.
Oh,
I'll
that
double
was,
check it.
was that what Andrew sent out?
I just looked at it real quick.
The master.
That was from a long time
I was
ago.
gonna say, that might-
That was
So-
from like
That's the historical.
2008.
Yeah,
That
so
was-
I was going to say.
I sent some
don't
things
think
around that were a
that's-
little bit historical today to give him
Oh,
some information that he
maybe
may
not,
need to
maybe it was-
develop some stuff. But
So we do have numbers on what the sports and
sure, we absolutely
extracurriculars-
do. Absolutely do. And we looked at that a couple of years ago
Where would
as
I
part.
see that? 'Cause I guess I'm not seeing.
Well,
Is that something?
well, let me just back up. So a couple of years ago when we were looking at activity fees and those types of things, we looked specifically at what the total cost of all extracurriculars were. And then we looked at, if we implemented an activity fee, how much money would that generate to offset that number, right? And my recollection was total extracurricular activities was somewhere south of $500,000, 400 and change. And the revenues that are coming in from activity fees and the physicals and those types of things was a little over 100, 120, 130, somewhere in that range. So we had a net number of $360,000 or something like that of costs, right? So that was the net number for the district. Now, what that is, it's all the sports, it's band, it's all those different things, and some clubs, but within those sports, what are we paying for? A long time ago, I'd seen a list of what those different things included, and it came from, I think, Tom McGath, who was the athletic director at the time. And so this question of whether we should be paying for item A or item B is really, I think, it's a red herring, because at the end of the day, if the school districts are spending more money on, let's say, balls and bats and those types of
I didn't mean
things.
to bring that discussion up here. I was just giving you the background.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Asking if the numbers have been vetted by any, because I haven't seen them. I don't know
Monica Hamill.
what is the cost of the sports program? What is the cost of
I was just
extracurriculars?
telling you that, yeah. So, and we broke it down. And we broke it down by. I mean, I can give you historical data. I haven't looked at it in a year and a
Shouldn't we
half.
have it every year? Why Why are you referencing,
Well,
like, why
it's
wouldn't that
within the
be?
budget.
It's
Some-
within
So
the
it
budget.
isn't, what is the
Sure.
budget for it? What are we
You're-
spending for
That's what I'm
sports?
Your preliminary budget that you approved 2 weeks ago includes $734,238 for all student activities, which would be all clubs, extracurriculars, and athletics. Now, we can do a breakdown of what's been submitted to make that $734,000 number.
Sure. And then you have
And you have to
offsetting
take
that,
off
the revenues that are coming in
That's
from
the
the
expense
activity
side.
fees and physicals and other
Well,
things
I
like
guess my
that.
question to you is, as a finance committee, have you paired that? Are you comfortable with that number? Is there savings to be had in that number?
Well, I guess it depends on, I mean, look, most of that number is salaries.
Is that 424,000?
It's salaries and benefits.
So, has it been looked at? Should we
You-
cut some offerings?
They're
If we're cutting
contractual.
classes and cutting curriculum,
Carol, the
cutting-
the salary and benefits are contractual.
not all the
Well,
extracurriculars.
4
Oh,
years
yeah?
ago, we.
No, they are.
What, we
We
cut
have to,
25%.
every year we have to offer the same number of extracurriculars regardless.
No,
of
you can
enrollment
cut,
level,
you can cut
interest.
sports.
Sure you can.
Yeah,
Have
you can
you-
cut
I'm not
band.
saying- Asking you as a committee.
Not this year, we did last year, I
What?
believe. We looked at cutting sports, so we not? That
Well,
was
there's a
on the
number of
table.
years in a row where, you know, middle school sports were on the table for being cut from the program because we
Isn't it
weren't.
good housekeeping to just look at those numbers every year before we just automatically go to?
Absolutely. I think, you know, I can tell you from sitting on the board and going through that and getting the feedback from the public, the board, at least that particular board, resigned itself that we wanted to try to keep those programs. And that the cost in terms of the intrinsic cost to the students who participate in those things outweighed the fiscal cost of providing that program. So for us, it was, we want to support this. We're going to look at other ways to try to minimize that number by instituting an activity fee or these other types of fees to generate some more revenue to help support it. But we weren't going to eliminate, we weren't going to sit here and start picking and choosing which sport stays and which one goes.
Well, I'm not even talking about sports at this point in age. I'm talking about extracurriculars. Are there extracurriculars that?
There's a finite, there's only a certain number of clubs at the high school, and some of those clubs, like yearbook and newspaper and those types of things, apparently support themselves with the sales of those things.
Yearbook's not a club, yearbook's curriculum.
It's both.
It's both.
So-
But they support the advisor. All the costs related to those clubs are for the advisors, okay? And the advisors get paid a couple $1,000s, and you add them all up, and it adds up to hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I'm not going to go there. If you guys looked at it and you're.
No, what I'm
comfortable
saying
with
is,
offerings,
you
then-
can't, the only way you can reduce that is either contractually with an MOU, and you change what people are being paid to advise a course, or you get rid of that extracurricular altogether.
And that's what I'm suggesting. That if
So-
you looked at, are there extracurriculars that are of low interest?
And what committee did we look at?
That was the activity
getting-
fee committee that looked at the extracurriculars,
Enhancements.
and the
We
building
did.
principal.
It's an expensive and costly
Okay, just,
extracurricular.
I'm not worried about what
I can
Wikipedia
write
says.
anything I want.
Well, I'll tell you, the building principal at the time, we went through all the clubs, and he said, if there isn't interest, we don't offer it. And so if we don't offer it, we're not paying the
Right.
advisory. So,
Right.
but when you get a bunch of kids enrolling in a thing, now look, we had a Spanish club, a French club, a German club, at this club, and my suggestion was, well, could you have just a foreign language club? Therefore, you have one advisor, and you have all the kids involved in that, as opposed to
I
having
appreciate the
three.
historical reference, I really do, because I haven't been on the board that long, but I'm asking about this year. Has
This
it
year,
been
we
looked
did
at?
not. And
We
I-
have declining enrollment, should the offerings be declining? That's all.
We did not look at that this year, I think, because I think the consensus was, we've looked at it year, and I think what the consensus was, we are going to try to address it in a different manner through contract negotiations and taking those positions out of the contract if we can, and then we have more flexibility.
Right.
Correct.
Because if we reduce the costs,
I get you. But are you saying that if it was one kid signed up, maybe I'm just not familiar?
No,
with
if
how
one
that
kid
works.
signed up, they don't have the
had-
course.
We had, at one point, we looked at all the clubs and how all the kids, and I thought there was some type of
When we
policy
instituted the
as to
activity
how
fee, if you-
many kids had to be in a club in order to have a club.
So understand this, okay, so when we instituted the activity fee, it was based on the number of sports and the number of clubs that somebody enrolled in. So the more clubs you enrolled in, the more it cost you.
Right.
And what that did was it immediately dropped the enrollment in a whole bunch of clubs because kids were just signing up for everything so they could put it on their transcript. right? Even if they never went. And so suddenly, because it was costing people money, they started to pick and choose the clubs they really wanted to be a part of, and that reduced a lot of this oversubscription. And so again, that helped with, we're not offering this club this year because kids just didn't sign up for it. So that
practice is
tool
in place
helped,
then.
right? I mean, now I can't say we looked at it this year, and we certainly didn't look at it last year, because overall, I'm looking at the global number and saying, well, that's about what it was the year before and the year before that. Total enrollment in the high school hasn't really changed. So, you know, that seems to be consistent with what the kids are doing up there. And so where we're seeing enrollment shrink is in the elementary schools, and to some degree in the middle school. Not that bubble hasn't quite hit the high school yet. Or I should say the bubble's in the high school right now. It hasn't graduated yet. So we haven't seen that number.
So I would also caution the policy committee. And I'm speaking from both sides here. You know, as a parent who gets all the sports fundraisers, I can tell you I'm tired of it. Every other week I'm turning around and there's none of the fundraiser. But by the same token, as a board member, I don't want to see the sports budget go up. So I caution the policy committee, you ratchet down too hard and then...
Well, at this point, we're just trying to find out who's paying what for what to see if there are things being purchased that don't really need to be purchased.
And that may be true.
That's all. We're just trying to get our hands around it.
And I think you got to get that information from Ms. Goss. I don't have that.
$500 bats a year, that's a little excessive.
Well, look,
I
mean, as a board, that was brought to our attention a number of years ago, where a member of the public would come up and say, did you know that the football team was getting steak dinners? And did you know this? And that was going on, and a lot of that disappeared. I'd like to think...
It's not disappearing. What we're thinking, what I'm reading about is it's just a shifting. That now it's shifted to fundraising. All the things that were being purchased before are still being purchased. And this is a global comment. This is across the state, not just across the district. That's why we're looking at it in this district. But generally speaking, the knee-jerk reaction to all the cuts from all the districts is that it's just shifted. There was a cost shift that is now on the backs of the kids. And that's a global statement. I don't mean to say that.
I'm not going to disagree with you, but I guess at the end of the day...
So we're just paring down to find out who's paying what for what and see if as much purchases are going on are necessary.
Right, and I guess what my response to that would be is if it costs, we'll pick an easy number, $1 million, right, to run the programs here. And right now the school district pays $700,000 and there's $300,000 of fundraising. And if we say, well, the school district needs to be paying for more of these things, well, then it's $800,000 from the school district and $200,000 from fundraising, but the other $100,000 has to come from somewhere. So where is it coming from? It's coming
I think
from...
what she's saying is there's things being purchased that aren't necessarily necessities for the sports.
That's what we're looking into. So just because we say we don't want it purchased by fundraising doesn't mean that automatically mean that the school districts are going to have to pay for it. We're just trying to get our hands around it.
Yeah.
But it's not being purchased by us, is it? So
Right.
it's not part of our budget.
No, and that's the comment, is we don't want things shift off the fundraising and back to the
I thought that was
budget.
the whole purpose why each team was going to submit their budget to the
Right.
And that's what we're hoping to see.
That should happen in
Once
August.
a full cycle. Well, we don't really have a say on what they're purchasing because they're their own individual entities.
No, but they're supposed to be working with us to say, look, we understand you need, I don't know,
That's why
whatever it
we're
is.
we're going to see through their budgeting what's being purchased on the backs of the kids. And what we're trying to do is get from the sports department what's being purchased so that as the board, we can look at both and say, there's overspending in this sport or not. Because, we're giving you 2 nets a year and you're buying 4 more. And we think the soccer, it's not a bad example, but the point, we cut them down.
Football is not more costly with how much redone every year.
Absolutely. It's not a dollar for dollar. It's a purchase per purchase. If a team's getting 4 bats from the district and they're still raising money and buying 4 more, then that's what we want to look at. But if the district's only giving them 1 bat every other year and they're fundraising to buy, their second bat, then that's something that, our committee might want to say, hey, we want to take that burden off the team because we don't think it's fair. So we're just, I didn't mean bring it to a fundraising.
She's not speaking, right? She's telling you.
Well, I mean, look, you can form a subcommittee and get into it. I can just tell you that I waded in this thing up to my eyeballs a couple of years ago, and I learned a lot. I still have piles of stuff sitting under my desk from all this. You can talk about the youth sports leagues that are around here and how they contribute. They dress up the fields, they rake the fields, they provide new batting cages, they provide new bases, they build up the turf, they do all these things to our fields because they use them, and that's kind of how they kind of pay the school district
Right, I
back. So those are
understand that.
expenses that we don't have. And so you can say, all right, well, maybe that's something the school district should be paying for, and if you do, then our costs go up, and then you say, all right,
My
well,
only question is if the committee, if finance looked at that, and I think you're saying to me, there's no savings to be had there, then.
I didn't say that.
No.
I didn't say that at all. I'm saying we haven't been given any information on it, we haven't looked at it, so.
This year we have not vetted that.
No, we can go back to.
Yeah, we gotta go back. I'd like to get home.
I
and
think
eat
it's
some time
way
tonight,
too early
so.
to talk about that, though, until we flush out more of the enrollment.
Okay, any other discussion?
We only got 3 weeks.
I need some sort of projections in based on what the actual.
Well, hopefully we'll have some more information on Monday based on these enrollment discussions, and that's going to pigeonhole this idea of furloughs into a specific number, and that's going to, and then our business office will roll out what the budget looks like going forward, and that'll help people make some decisions. That's all we can do.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay? And unfortunately, I know everybody wants all these answers like yesterday, but it's all about how the information gets doled out to the board to make these types of decisions. And as you guys are aware from last year, we don't get a lot of the information until the end.
Right.
I mean, we still don't know what the state's going to give us.
Yeah.
We may
So-
not know.
And you may not know. One year we went till October before we found out. So, you know, that's one of those things that you do the best you can with the information you have.
We're just using last year's numbers.
And quite frankly, I don't mind waiting to the end because that means a better decision.
Right.
Then I'd rather wait till the end because we're going to get the best decision, the best information we can, so we can all make the decision that we think is best for the school district. Okay, we're ready to move on to cafeteria?
Yes, I,
He planted seed.
Can you give that to
He planted seed and I'm gonna move.
Tamara? Can you give that to Carol, please? What page am I supposed to be looking at?
cafeteria fund balance history. The next item, fund balance review, cafeteria.
This one?
That's it.
Okay, so we're going to look at this spreadsheet. It says Daniel Boone Food Service Fund Balance History. So what I asked Mr. Small to do, and this is for the benefit of the public. Do you have another copy of this, by the way? Can I have it? Is I asked Mr. Small to prepare this so that the public would have a better understanding of what it is that we're wrestling with as a district as it relates to the cafeteria fund and why it is that we're looking at different options as it comes to staffing and stuff like that. I wanted you guys to have this and see. Okay. I know this is important to you. So what you're looking at here is the information that comes from our audits every year as it relates to fund balance, the cafeteria fund balance. The cafeteria sells food, for those of you who don't know, and generates revenue, and those revenues, it's its own business entity, and so those revenues go to offset our expenses to run the cafeteria for the year, and then hopefully it generates a profit, and those profits build up into an escrow account or like its own fund balance, and that fund balance is used to pay for things like new ovens, dishwashers, plates, silverware, everything that goes into the cafeteria. So the capital expenses that come out of there, as well as our operating expenses that come out of there, are all part of the revenues that are generated from sales. And what we've noticed over the last number of years is the number of meals that we've been providing, which was 400-something thousand meals a year, has declined depreciatively to 300, just under 300,000 meals. So that's a significant drop in overall revenues that are being generated. And we've looked at, well, why are the meals going down? Is it part of this, the federal programs that were rolled in and the meals that have to be combined together in order to get the reimbursements from the federal government? Is it a function of declining enrollment? Is it a function of marketing? I mean, why are the meals declining? And we've raised menu prices. We've looked at the menu offerings. And in the span that you see here from 1999, 98 through 2015, what you're going to see is a variety of different management models that we had in place. At one point in time, we were all the employees and the management was in-house, i.e. they were employees of the school district. We were running our own food service company. And then I think right about when I got on the board, which was in 2007, 2008, We switched to a hybrid model where we brought in Sodexo and
2003.
oh, that was in 2003. All right, so my fault. We brought in Sodexo, and Sodexo was providing the management, but the employees were still part of the school district. And we've been operating under that hybrid model now for the better part of 10, 12 years, and obviously it's not working as our fund balance has declined depreciably, as you can see. It's gone from 215 to a high of 353, 346 in 8, 9. Now, I will point out in 2008, 2009, that was also our peak enrollment in the school district. We were as high as 4,000 students at that time. We're now down at about 3,500 students. So I think part of this, in terms of, you have to keep that in perspective, that a lot of this, the more mouths you have, the more meals you sell, typically, and as the number of mouths decline, then you can expect your revenues to decline. Now, one of the metrics that I look at with the audit is if you take a look at your fund balance, the auditor has recommended you take that, your total operating expenses for a year, and you divide that by 9, and then you multiply that number by 3 to get an operating coverage amount that they would like to see in your fund balance at the end of the year. And based on last year's audit, where's my last year's audit? We had a ending position of $112,761. We should have had $445,940 in our fund balance, because that's an operating coverage of about 3 months. Okay?
Oh, right.
All right, so that's their recommendation from an auditing perspective. Clearly, the way we're going now, if we don't change something, we run out of cash in the cafeteria fund within a year and a half, and then all these expenses start coming out of our the general fund balance and our operating costs for the school district itself. So that's why we're looking at it the way we are. That's why when Sodexo's contract ended, we're looking at a variety of different options. So I'll segue from this sheet.
So is the non-operating revenue, is that the government
Subsidy.
coming in?
There's two components. You have your federal and state meal subsidies, and also the PSERS Social Security subsidy.
Oh, that's okay.
And for the benefit of the public, if you want to verify the numbers that you see on the spreadsheet, and we'll put this up on the website when we're all done, you can go to the website and pull down all of our individual audits, and those numbers will be reflected on the audits as well. And it'll be under statement of revenues and expenses and changes in net position for the proprietary fund. So you go there and you'll see these exact same numbers there in a little bit more detail. They break it down by salaries, benefits, food service management fees, supplies, miscellaneous, et cetera, et cetera. And they also break down the revenues by state, local, and federal.
So I had a comment here, or maybe it's a question and a comment, but I'm looking at that non-operating revenue and seeing how that's really gone up dramatically. It doesn't seem to be tied to enrollment at all. Is that, I mean, is it based on the number of meals we serve, or?
Your non-operating revenue increases when PSERS increases.
Okay.
Your PSERS subsidy would increase.
Because, I mean, that's a huge swing. So really, in effect, I mean, it's really performing that much less because of that non-operating revenue coming in to plug. You know, there's a...
If you look back in like 2004 or 5, we had roughly the same number of students. The operating revenue was $979,000 versus $746,000.
Right. The rest
That's
is...
a huge difference between the operating revenue.
So, I've also heard...
Well, you got two things going on there. Your operating revenues are down $100,000, and your operating expenses are up by $200,000. So that's a net loss in your position of over $300,000 right there. Yeah.
I keep hearing, and it's a comment that's been made a couple times in the public, and I've heard it from other people, that the food just isn't good. And that's a concern. I know there's some mandates that have come down as far as, you know, health mandates and what we're feeding the kids, but I'm wondering if I mean, that's got to be a big driver, right?
That's the marketing aspect.
Right. So if the food's not any good, I mean, what can we do different there?
Well,
You still stay
that's a
within
good
the
segue. I think that's a.
Well, let's talk about the options at the, now I gotta find what, didn't you give me a sheet with the 4 different options?
Yes. The big one.
They're not very good.
Oh, I got that one. So we're gonna switch now to, do you have another one of those? Now, this is a draft, right?
Yes.
All right. Well, I'll get this to you guys in a minute. Okay, let me get the board to approve dispersion of this because it is a draft. So this is basically 4 options that we've been looking at. We have a food services company that came in and they provided a bid to the school district to provide food service with just providing management and using our current employees, our cafeteria staff. Yes?
First column is food service management company, 1-year contract with a guaranteed break even using the Daniel Boone School District's employees as they are now.
Right. And then the next option, next column is,
Next column, they guarantee, it's once again a 1-year contract. It has a $100,000 performance guarantee. They retain all of the Daniel Boone employees as their own and provide the benefits, and that's basically.
so they basically hire our staff
They
for 1 year,
Right,
and that's the projections for that.
right.
All right. And then the next one is,
The total self-op, where we would hire, Daniel Boone would hire its own food service manager and maintain the employees as they currently are, as Daniel Boone Area School District employees. And the final column is a self-op, where we would hire a food service manager, but we would join forces or use SOS, which stands for School Operations Services, which is an entity that's working with a number of districts across the state, especially in this area. And the employees would be retained, the current employees would be retained by SOS and be paid by them, and their benefits provided there.
Lauren, what does that line under the 2 columns mean? Employees retain the 7.5% features.
That means that currently, as Daniel Boone employees in the state employee retirement system, 7.5% of their salary is withheld and sent to PACERS. They would no longer be in the PACERS system.
Well, you're just saying they would now
They would
have that in their paycheck.
That would be in their
Okay.
paycheck, and they could use it for investing on their own. Now, the numbers that we used here, the operating revenue at the top, we're using participation rates based on where we are right now at the end of this school year. Is how that number was driven out with current meal pricing. And as I moved down through and estimated what the cost would be with the per meal cost that is in the proposal from Nutrition Group, and estimating meal cost if we were totally self-op. So there's a lot of estimates here, and you see the bottom lines that I ended up with in speaking with Nutrition Group. Their position is, but we're going to provide a much better product, and we're going to have the marketing. I heard the whole sales pitch then. And that's how we're going to provide either a break-even or a $100,000 guarantee.
So, Brian, to answer your question, Dave and I were at a presentation Friday in Lauren's office with this SOS group. And I understand that Nutrition Group has similar feelings. They actually would create a student advisory panel regarding the food. SOS was talking about having your regular lunch menu and then having a premium lunch menu. So if you wanted to spend a little more for different food or more food, you'd be able to.
Okay.
So it gave the students more options and more input into what they were eating.
Now, one piece that I need to interject here. What I've included here on this number with the, get my bifocals focused here, the 613,000 is just the cost of assuming the
Where do you see that
employees.
number?
In the far right-hand column under self-op SOS.
Other
Okay, I
purchase
see it, yes.
services. Okay. SOS will provide a whole menu of items if we want to also add their consulting service. And we can do that, what you're describing, at a rate of an hourly rate or a monthly rate.
That's what this number is made up of,
No,
the assumption?
no,
Or this is going to be in addition to?
This is just the employers.
Oh, I see.
What they're saying to us is, depending on who you might hire as a food service manager, if that food service manager has the experience, they can do exactly what we would do as a consultant. So because of that, I didn't plug in that additional, it's $100 an hour or $3,500 a month for them to come in and look over the shoulder of the food service manager and provide all these things.
But this nutrition group would do that themselves?
Yes, that's part of their claim to
And that's
fame.
in that-
They have the personnel that's all included with their per meal price.
And she had also talked about, I guess instead of a food service manager having some kind of team leader or something in the elementary and then the middle and high school, I think was what she said. Kind of have like a supervisor that she would kind of supervise on a
Right.
weekly or whatever.
She would evaluate your personnel, and part of this $100 an hour, $3,500 a month consulting coordination would be doing what you're describing with your key employee in the building.
But that would eliminate the food service manager, correct?
Not
No.
necessarily. No, you still have your food service manager there. And what she's saying is, if your food service manager is where they should be able to do that. But if they can't, if they don't have the experience, they would come in for a month or two and get them up to speed.
Maybe I misunderstood her. I thought she said one of the districts she had, they did not have a manager.
That's correct.
And they had,
And she would come in just as a coordinator
right.
one day a week and keep an eye on things and have those individuals. So you could, if you reach the point where you have that coordinating person in each building trained and functioning, then she would just monitor that. And then you wouldn't have a true food service manager. That is what she is doing in some districts.
All right.
If they're coming in once a week, is that $3,500 a month, or is that at $100?
1 day a week.
They're just coming in 1 day a week.
Okay. So say 8 times 4 is 32, 35 hours a week.
Wouldn't that be the same as a manager that you already have in each?
Well, it'd be less money. So with the assumptions we're looking at here is a salary of $65,000 for a manager plus $26,000 in benefits for that manager, I'd imagine, which are health benefits and pension, right? PSERS. So you're looking at $91,000 a year for a food service manager in terms of total cost to the school district. That's if you did away with that and you brought somebody in at $3,500 a month as a consultant, but just 1 day a week, that's half the cost.
I mean, what he was saying, have somebody at each school. They already have managers at each school. And they have Sodexo, the lady from Sodexo, telling the managers what to do with their various things. Like, she's the cafeteria manager at the high school.
Mm-hmm.
They would replace Sodexo, basically.
Yeah, they'd be taking the place of Sodexo.
Well, they're very careful not to be construed as a food service management company.
Right.
They're a consultant.
Bear with me, because maybe I'm just slow. What's the advantage to this? Because the number in parentheses is larger.
Well, that's that 613,000 is a big number.
The hope would be, I guess, that they would help drive the marketing
That's
to
it.
recover the foods.
And you, if you went
Well-
with nutrition again, or as a food service management company, you would hope that they would
Well,
do something similar.
I don't know if you know this off the top of your head, but have our costs for operating expenses, salaries and benefits decreased for the cafeteria over the last 5 years? Or have they
Say it again?
stayed stagnant?
I'm sorry, was it?
Our cost for the salaries and benefits, the operating expense of the employees, has that decreased over the last 4 or 5 years? That's it.
Teachers.
So, well,
Going up.
because if our meal count's going down, and we're keeping the same, I mean, we're talking about furloughing teachers because enrollment's declining. If lunches are declining, you would think you would have the same conversation. So,
And that would be,
because I can tell you in restaurants, when your numbers go down, they send people home.
Yeah.
that is being discussed.
Okay.
And the other, I guess the other potential option is if we did bring nutrition in, SOS could also be someone you could hire and hold their feet to the fire, so to speak. If they came in and did a review once a year or every other year, or
SOS would
Do a staffing.
formulate a proposal of that nature.
so I mean, if someone had come in to make sure Sodexo was doing what they were supposed to do, would we be in the situation we are now? I don't know.
Good point.
I described it
So
as an
are you
internal
suggesting a fifth column, which is the nutrition group with this SOS group coming in to look in on them? Is that what you're suggesting?
Another option.
I was curious.
Yeah.
Because you,
Yeah, the only thing is, if I'm reading this right, this nutrition group here, you're only talking a one-year contract.
correct.
So if we're not satisfied with the food, the service, the profit or whatever, they're gone.
Right. Or if you brought Sodexo in, or excuse me, I keep saying
SOS.
SOS.
No, if you brought Nutrition Group in with either of their proposals, and after 2 months, you weren't totally satisfied and they weren't responding, you could bring SOS in on their hourly proposal and say, evaluate.
But that would only be if we're dissatisfied.
Correct. Correct. I mean, if nutrition should come in and really hit a home run and numbers go up, meal quality goes up, delivery improves, then it's fine. And my guess is that any organization such as Nutrition Group that comes in, they know they have a 1-year contract and they want a renewal. They're going to do everything they can to really show us that they're better than the competition.
Yeah, they better sell some food, right?
Yeah, and that was part of the problem when we met last September with Sodexo. I said, you've got to get the numbers up, you've got to improve the product, you've got to improve the delivery, and they weren't interested in marketing.
That's telling.
So
No, we had lots of meetings
kind of
with
need a
them.
recommendation because we're in the midst of negotiations with the support staff as well. So
Well, I mean, does anybody have any other questions on the numbers as they're being presented? I mean, I think it was fair in terms of you looking at the food service revenue and keeping that constant across all three.
that's the biggest question.
Well, how else are you going to evaluate your expenses,
Agreed.
right? So you got to set the number at something. But you can say, well, look, if you bring the nutrition group in, we anticipate you're going to drive sales higher, so that just improves that particular option, right, in terms of the consideration. Or SOS and self-op is going to drive that number higher too. So maybe it's not a negative; it's a break even. I don't know. I guess the question is it going to drive it high? Is it going to drive it $130,000 higher? That's a big number, $130,000. I mean, we haven't had those kind of numbers in a long time.
But Lauren, what you're showing us here, 3 of these 4 options are basically in the negative.
Yes. But especially with the, if you were to compare the first column to what they say they will produce in a break even, they're saying you're off because we're going to improve those numbers and get you to break even.
So there's, so let me just clarify that, just so I understand. So they're saying that negative $156,000 at the bottom, they're going to eat that if they don't get the revenue?
They're going to guarantee us a break-even operation.
But the second column gives us a $100,000 guarantee.
That gives us a $100,000 performance guarantee.
So that increases our fund balance by $100,000.
That's with their employees, correct?
With them assuming
Right.
our employees as their employees.
But that, I mean, that number's coming from salaries and benefits.
Correct.
I mean, it's clear. It's
Well,
$400,000.
Also, that $100,000 is also coming from their increase in the meal price, correct? Their increase in the meal price.
Well, that's not being assumed in this model.
No. We set the meal price.
I thought that $100,000 was part of the meal price increase.
Yeah, I
as well.
thought there
I
was
thought I
an
recalled that
increase in
as
the
part
meal
of
price.
Well, in this model, you're looking at, we're assuming that all meal prices and number of meals stay the same across the different.
I thought you said part of the nutrition proposal was that they were going to increase prices.
No.
Well,
I do, I
If they- If they
must
do-
not understood something.
you also have to, then the question is, what is the impact of an increased price on meals have on the number of meals sold? Does it have no
I must have
impact?
misspoke.
Does it bring it down? Do they also increase the number of meals? And if they're doing that, then in both column A and B, you're going to see the number go up, right? By the same amount, you would assume, right? So your revenues,
Well,
your top line revenue model wouldn't change, right? Because you're going to assume they're going to do the same thing in terms of marketing, or they're going to do the same thing in terms of pricing. They're going to do all the same things that they would normally do, whether it's option A or option B, to drive the number up. At least that's what I would assume, right? And so,
SOS did, her opinion was that we were about
10
a
cents.
nickel, dime short, low.
We're at 260 or 250. Where are we at here? For lunch prices, we're at 250. Yeah, she said that 265 should be 270 to 275.
and we always looked at,
That's minimal.
we would compare ourselves to all the other school districts in the area and see where we were in terms of pricing. And, you know, I would always say, well, we ought to be at the top, and other people on the board would say, no, we got to be at the bottom, and we ended up wherever we ended up. There was no math or scientific analysis to it. It was a gut decision by each board member on what they thought the price should be per meal. And so we tried to stay up at average or above average in terms of our meal pricing. But
And you know, BCTC, we just raised the prices at the last meeting.
Yeah.
I haven't,
I think it's been 2 years since we've raised prices here.
I'll pull that out,
Last year you flat-
figure out.
Yeah,
what
last year we flatlined, the year before we raised
You did
prices.
just before I got.
Some
You
of them
raised
are
them
the
before
same.
we were on the board.
Right.
Maybe only raise like 75 cents. But their food's pretty good.
Well, here's what I guess what I'm wondering is, would this be, I don't know whether we should go into some sort of executive session.
And we,
Yeah. I think what I want to say, I'd like to save for an executive session.
me too.
And we can pull a quick one and just go into the other room real quick, and then we can come back down here and sit down. If that's all right with everybody. Is that all right?
Are we
Oh,
allowed? I guess.
Yeah, I don't see why you can't.
Personnel and contracts,
Negotiation
so
issues.
it's- Yeah.
Yeah, so let's go talk about this real quick, and then, because if we're going to try to bring, is the goal here to try to have some sort of recommendation?
Yeah, that was good too.
Okay. What?
Yeah, it's getting late. I mean, it's getting late in the year. I think we need to come up with
I
something.
don't remember, you don't have to have an executive session. You have to announce it at the next meeting. So at the next meeting, you'll have to announce it.
We'll be right back.
The problem is,
I have no opinion, but I need to, questions.
Well, the student account, thank you. Enrollment is at 3,500-ish. It's going down.
Yes.
She said 34, okay.
Yeah, it's been going down. The last 5 years, it's been going down about 100 students.
Okay. About 100 students. You want to pull up a chair? I feel guilty that you should be.
That's fine.
You're exhausting your tennis. Your tennis muscles. You're so tall. You would kill the opposition. Discuss need to share, I guess those preliminaries, better sharing of data between the committee and the board, whatever. The millage is now, and I have it, I thought somewhere at 29, 6, 1. Yes, 29.
No, I got it on the budget.
I had it written down.
No, I have it.
I'd be thanking you, laddie.
I have it right here.
Okay. Talking about the kind of students. Support students. Because the juniors are going to go. So they don't have any time to make points. 28.96. So on 100,000 home, it's 2,896. Okay. And the value of Mill brings in about
No, for us to bring in, rounding about $1 million.
I thought that was
It's close to the $1,060,000.
okay.
Most of that's up to
The 15-16 budget right now is 53.09. I mean, the budget would be around. That's expensive. The revenues I was sure are like 7 cafeteria or cash house. Right. Yeah, okay, that's the budget now.
Let me grab
Oh, you're too good.
this sheet.
And you're expecting a fund balance of 3.49 million at the moment?
At the end of which year?
Oh, yeah.
At the end of,
I meant like ready for next year as well.
we're estimating about 3.6 for the, at the end of the fifth year.
Okay.
And,
As 3.6 million, and 14.50. Accounting or finance?
yeah, I have a degree in finance.
Nearby or far away? You're doing good. You're doing good, laddie. Okay. Sounds good.
Use of, around about 500,000. 16 year ending minimum balance of 3.1
Okay. 3 point. Oh, okay. Let's do it. Use about. Which is unhealthy.
Yeah.
Is there a meeting coming up on Monday?
Yes, maybe the whole.
One small which is disappeared. You is going to be Mr. Miller. You were very kind. Michael Payne, right?
It was interesting to know the system.
It's a terrible system. It's a terrible system. You're going to be heading for MBA soon? Dropping by about 100 students per year. Now, about 300. What's about 350?
What?
No, I'm sorry, 3,500.
Yes.
Yes, I have a very the discussion of full day kindergarten will be discussed. If possible, staff cuts that's being discussed and closing the school district building. Somebody said maybe that should be moved up in potential closing in 17, 18.
We have 17 budgets. Andrew Basil mentioned notes about possibly making it 16, 17.
16, 17. In order to possibly 16, 17, closing a building as that been touched with each one? Oh, I'm sorry. I did that good first. It would be an elementary, I assume. Because you have 4 years, 3, so only 3. Okay, awesome. Okay. So, actually, right now, there is no tax increase.
Yes, in the current budget, yes. No, I'm just saying, yes, there is not one.
Yes, there is no.
Yes, there is not one.
There is no. I'm sorry, I can blame it when it's all on so far, in your opinion, what's the option for the option? Right now, have food service company, right now you have
No,
XO?
We've had them since 2003.
So right now, they provide the management and your own staff.
Yes.
How big is that food services?
What kind of facts do you want?
Oh, I'm just wondering, like number of cafeteria or something.
It's 30 workers.
Around the district.
Yes, 38.
It's so cool. You're so kind. Were you doing that?
I'm not telling you anything breaking, it's just public.
One-year contract. Do they now have one-year contract? Is the Sodexo contract a yearly one?
So that's what's done.
But no.
Yes. We have a bid from Nutrition Group.
That's what it is. Okay. Nutrition group. Okay. Nutrition. That's what they're called. Nutrition group.
The Nutrition Group.
Do you like Penn State?
I did a lot.
My next door neighbor is a computer lab.
Oh, yeah?
Sports knows from Penn State. He's got Penn State stickers all over the cars. It's really neat. Flags started. And then from nutrition. That's the RFP.
No, we put out an RFP, but we got a bid response.
Nutrition group. So they're the candidate right now.
Yes.
So the second option, food service company, that would be, if you go with nutrition, that would be it. They would provide the management, but use your staff. The option two, they hire our staff for 1 year.
It's a one-year contract.
It's a 1-year contract.
There's 2 scenarios.
2 scenarios.
One where they provide a manager and use Danny Boone employees, and they guarantee a break-even financial performance. Scenario 2 involves, that scenario is break-evens. Scenario 2 involves a nutrition group manager and nutrition group employees, and they guarantee the district at least $100,000.
Manager and employees. And guarantee at least 100,000.
You too.
Property.
Yes, sir.
First one again, I'm sorry, scenario 2 was the nutrition group managers and hires own employees.
Nutrition group
across the board. And every day.
1960, I'm 120.
There you go.
Okay. So really, never mind the four options that your colleague mentioned. It's really,
We have a self-op, we
No.
can hire managers to self-op.
Heck no.
That's a third option.
If I,
fair.
We can hire managers.
exactly, but,
That is an option, plus we can, the fourth option is using various consulting arrangements for that being done.
So the decision would be soonish. Third option once again was to hire a manager and, sorry, third option was to,
Hire a self-op.
thank you. Thank you, sir, very much.
That's all right, I can last on battery. All right, so for the benefit of the tape that's been running for the last couple of minutes, we are back from an executive session. And what we're going to do here is we're not going to be providing this information out just yet because we think it's probably best interest of the school district, and quite frankly, it's fair to the cafeteria workers. We want to share all this information with them directly. And we understand that there's a meeting scheduled next Thursday with the cafeteria workers and the negotiations team. So we're going to provide this information to all the cafeteria, to the negotiation team and the union representatives of that before broadcasting this out to the public, so that you guys have some input on this. Okay, that's what we want to see. We want to see some input from the cafeteria workers on the options that are in front of us, and we don't think it's fair to do that, but publish it out to the public and without their input first.
So there will be some kind of, like June 30th, some kind of.
No, there's definitely going to be a decision,
Oh, yeah.
and it has to happen quickly. But we want input from union representation before the board makes a decision, right? We don't want just the board saying, oh, this is what we're going to do. We want to get that input from the union representatives.
Mrs. Cup, is she on the negotiations?
Yeah.
So if some of the other food service employees want to come, if they talk to the union, but see if they're allowed to come out, and we can have a discussion next Thursday.
Perhaps all the managers of the different buildings, or some other leaders within the cafeteria workers can attend the meeting as well. So more people get the same message and have some input, so that our negotiation team can take that feedback and come back to the board.
What time is that?
You said 5, is it?
Is it
5, I
Is
believe.
it at 5, or did it have to be moved?
No, that was the one.
That one.
Oh, that was another one?
Yeah.
I'm so confused.
Yeah, we're at 5 o'clock on the 11th.
Yeah.
And that's a middle school we're meeting.
No,
Okay.
unfortunately, everything you said is going right out to the press.
What's that?
It's going right out to the press.
What is?
Everything you said. We had a sidebar, are you from the press?
Yes, I do.
Well, are you?
Yes.
No, he just had a sidebar, he told him everything, you were discussing. So it's not going to be quiet.
He wasn't in there.
It's going to go right out to the press.
I was discussing public.
Well, I heard you discuss it. It sounded pretty much like what was just said here, but it's okay.
Well, look, clearly everything that was discussed at this meeting by this board is on the tape, and that's all a matter for public discussion. I think what we wanted to discuss had to do with negotiations, and out of consideration to the employees, we want their input on the numbers here. We didn't really discuss in detail the numbers that are here, and I don't think it's fair to our employees to be having that conversation without them. So I think we're doing the right thing by including them in the conversation and getting their feedback.
The fair thing you want to do for your employees, to keep them
Well,
and be done with it.
Mr. Perry, we're trying to work towards a solution here. So, and we're going to get their
And only
feedback.
sensible union will never let you do this.
What's that?
And only sensible union will never let you do this.
Duly noted. Okay.
big joke, I know.
It's not a joke. I'm just not.
I've just seen a lot of people laughing about
Well,
this
you just
Nobody's-
said,
all the
you said
time.
that you
You're laughing, you're always laughing.
You don't
Mr.
even know what
Templin,
we were
Mr.
suggesting.
Templin.
You laugh about everything.
Guys, come on.
You don't even know what we were suggesting, so how?
No, I know what you were talking about before you objected.
Okay, Mr.
That's very
Templin.
unprofessional.
All right, Mr. Templin, please. All right, we're all keeping our cool here. We want to treat each other.
I'm keeping my cool when
But you're
when I see
shouting.
people laugh about people losing their jobs.
Nobody's
That's not-
laughing.
That's nothing to keep your cool about.
That's not what we're laughing.
Nobody's
No, we
laughing
laugh
about.
about
All right, end of discussion. Okay, end of discussion. We're moving on. Access fund.
Okay.
I asked Mr. Small to bring this forward because this is something we haven't reviewed in a little while. A number of years ago, Dr. Otto brought to our attention that we had this type of funding available. We had accrued a little bit of a balance, and we had not really been maximizing the full amount of reimbursement that we could get from the state for access funding. And so he actually tweaked it up, and it became a great source of revenue to come into the school district that we then were able to use to pay for certain employees' salaries that provide services to our special needs students. And I'll let Mr. Small sort of fill in a little bit more detail as that goes on.
The first pages 2, 3, and 4 go into the details on how this all is driven out, and I'll just give you the broad brush approach. But if you were to go on page 2, you would see that grand total number of $2,650,000. That is the gross amount that is in our cost settlement summary for services provided to medical access eligible students. Okay? So if you flip the page then to page 3, I'll show you quickly how this number disappears. Look down at the bottom under grand total, the $2,650,000. Everybody gets hit with the next percentage. Direct medical percentage, 22.81%. So that's all. It becomes the $2,650,000 becomes $604,000. And you go the next column over, the $604,000 is subject to the indirect cost rate, which is $60,462. You add that back to the net column of $604,625. That becomes $665,087. Okay. The next column, your IEP ratio, is explained down at the bottom. It's the ratio of IEPs that use medical access to all IEPs, which in our case is a 28.2%. So the $665,000 number becomes $187,000. Now keep in mind, this is the new system from 2 years ago forward. Prior to that time, you received much more funding than you do now.
So what they're basically saying is we have $2.6 million in costs, and what we're eligible in terms of reimbursement is about $187,000.
No, I'm not done yet.
But it gets, we're going to go to the next page.
One quick step back, so when it says cost settlement, is that the negotiated lawyer type settlement, or is
Well,
that
you have to submit the individuals that you're using, and then quarterly, we have to submit the gross wages for those individuals that have been used, and then all that comes together to come up with that big number. It's based on their salaries and benefits, and what else? Other costs, transportation costs.
Yes, transportation, tuitions,
Any related costs. Okay, to keep in mind, we're only talking about medical access only. All right, so then if you take that $187,000 number and you come forward and they make adjustments on it, so you're down to $174,000, and then on page 4 to the right, the federal adjustment comes in at 54 and 53%. So what you actually receive is the $93,000 thereabouts. Okay? So $100,000 a year. Now,
is this what's called an unfunded mandate?
Yes.
but honestly, when they changed the formulation in the process 2 years ago, they removed a lot of things.
I'm sorry, can you say that again? I'm having trouble hearing you.
A lot of the things that were eligible in the past, under the old system, are no longer eligible. Okay? So, go to page 5, and there's the history of the fund, as Mr. Basil spoke of earlier. A few years back, you began to dig into it. And you can, if you start at the bottom and work up, that date column in the middle. Okay, on the 21st of May this year, we drew down $559,289 from what was in the bank. A year ago, it was $611. The year before that was $615. $531, $400. You can see the numbers. Right now, we estimate what's in the bank is $565,448. Okay, so there is funds still in the bank for us, but right now, also, it looks like we're only adding about $100,000 a year.
So one of the things that we did back in, I guess it was 09, 8, 9, somewhere in that range, is we began aggressively looking at how we can, A, apply for these funds and get them, and B, then turn around and actually utilize these funds to offset some of our costs. Because before we weren't assigning anybody's salaries to these funds. And there's guidelines you have to follow. You can't just assign it to anybody. It's got to be a specific type of need. And so we really sat down and tried to identify, okay, it's this aide, it's this person, it's that person, and those salaries are going to come out of Access. And so long as we do what we're supposed to do for the reimbursements every year, hopefully this balance stays where it is, around $500,000. But I think we were warned that it could potentially, we could eventually deplete it over time. But we weren't using it, so we figured, well, use it, and if you end up depleting it, and it takes you 10 years to do that, so be it. That helped us, get through the budgetary crisis that we're in now, we'll address what happens going forward. But hopefully, when we get to the other side of the whole pension issue and everything else, we'll be in a better place, and it won't be so necessary. So I guess the question I had for Mr. Small is, since I hadn't looked at this in probably 4 years, A, let's take another look at it, let's get the board familiar with it, and then B, are we using, and this would be a question for Ms. Torsia and I guess Shelley Mikowski, is are we assigning this to all the people that we possibly can?
Right.
Is there, but have things changed in the last 4 years? Maybe we have an employee that could be being paid out of Access that isn't, and we ought to be looking at reviewing that on an annual basis to make sure that we are covering everybody that we possibly can be to help defray some of our costs out of our regular operating budget.
Okay,
Right?
that help?
Okay? Yeah. So that's basically it. So I'm just not making any decisions here other than we're going to try to direct the administration to take a second look at this as well and just make sure that we are using the money to the best.
We could have saved some money on that page.
Use the whole toner right there.
Lauren, the staffing that's listed here, this is what's paid out of these funds? Not necessarily what we have?
You're
We have 3 psychologists?
You're required to enter a pool of employees each year that are earmarked toward medical access eligible.
So it's not the total universe of our costs.
No, but don't we have 3 psychologists?
I believe we do, yeah.
And this only lists 2. Wouldn't the 3rd psychologist be included in this group?
That's the question.
Not unless they're not, I mean, maybe they should be. That's the question I have for Shelley Mikowski and Mary Beth. Is this $2.6 million the total nut that we should be applying for?
Yeah, because if you add one to that, it raises that.
Yeah.
So, but of the 2.6, and through all the calculations, we end up getting 93,000.
Yes.
So how do we determine like who's the contractor and how?
That all comes out of the special ed department.
Special ed department.
They could certainly tell you exactly who they're earmarking or identifying as.
Now, in the past, because
We have to
Dr.
double
Otto,
that to get 180,000.
Well, it's about.
Can you do the math on that? You know where to go there. Even if you double it, you're only going to get 180,000.
You're not talking about actually
Right?
spending more money, though. You're
No,
talking about.
It's a calculation of that, though. Just
Making sure
labeling
they're-
people and putting them in that category, right?
Right.
I'm saying, I get what you're saying, but
But hey, look, 10 grand here, 20 grand there, $93,000. I mean, these are all things that help, right? It helps defray our costs. That's a full-time employee right there, $93,000 a year that's being covered by these funds now. So it's helpful. Okay. Is that it? What do we got here? Special education.
Okay. The special education extraordinary payment sheet. Did I give that to all of you?
Yes.
Got it,
Okay.
thank you.
This is related to different. Each year in the state budget, or I shouldn't say, up to this year, there's an allocation placed in there for called contingency or extraordinary special education payments. And I believe it's about 9.5 million. And every November, from November, I believe, till February, there's a window of opportunity for the districts to report out services provided by student with services in excess, I believe, of $75,000 total, all services provided, okay? So you have to identify those students, and then there's a formula that goes into that, and you submit this report. And the state runs their magic on it and says, yeah, you're eligible for this much for this student, this much. Well, the maximum that any district can receive is $150,000. So what you have before you is the history of our receipts of that extraordinary payment to the district. So this year we received 150, as we did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, basically 7 years prior, because of the number of students that we have that have that high cost of services provided. So it's a means the state provides. You know, for years, special education went nowhere until a year ago. They reformulated or reworked the formula for reimbursement, so hopefully you get more now. But this was a means to help offset that. So this just shows you what we have received. Talking with Mr. Basil, he said, how come you don't put it in the budget? I said, well, it's as uncertain as the weather. He said, yeah, but we've got a history here. So on your 5-year plan tonight, you will see a line item added under state revenue called special ed contingency, right under special education. So I plugged in the 150 for the 14-15 year, and being the conservative that I am, I plugged in 75,000 going across.
Son of a gun, man. I told him 150, and you hear what he did? He pulled it out, said 75.
So anyway, moving forward, we will include this, but that's the history on those payments, and as long as we file the application in a timely manner and the numbers are there, we'll.
So my point was, when we were talking about it the other day, I said to him, I was like, look, let's take a look at, I understand that it's not guaranteed, but you really need to be taking a look at the historical cost overall. And, you know, if there was a range, if every year it changed, and one year was 90, another year it was 150, then it was 110, then it was 120, then we really need to pick some sort of logical assumption in the middle that would be a conservative number to input in the budget going forward. But let's take a look at what the historical numbers are. Well, I mean, you know, 7 years of $150,000, I would push that we make an adjustment in the budget that number should be higher going forward. Maybe it's not 150, that's the maximum number, but I don't know if I would pick 75. I understand why he did, being conservative. Me, I think I'd push a little bit higher number.
You would like a higher number?
But I think that's up to us as a finance committee to make a recommendation to Mr. Smalls of what number needs to be in there.
We don't know the number for next year yet?
Not until you...
It has always, the max is 150, has been as long as the program's been in place. Next year will be dependent upon how much we...
But didn't Mary Beth put something out about Shelley getting an extraordinary?
That's this.
Yeah, but I thought she said it was awarded.
It's a process.
For this year.
Well, it's the way the system, it isn't like a competitive grant. It is simply every November to February, you have a window of opportunity to submit verification of students in excess of 75,000 in provided services.
Wouldn't it be based on whether the kids graduated or not? I mean, isn't it, it says cost per services per kid.
But
So
I
it's a
don't believe it
report.
has anything to do with
If those
graduation.
kids move out of the system, they
But
could
you got new kids
project
moving in.
that.
Yeah,
Well-
if they move out, then.
Then we
and
know,
your- and your number
couldn't
of
the department
students-
make some sort of judgment year to year, knowing, who's matriculating,
It's
staying
based-
in the system?
I don't have it with me, but I have the whole system that they use and the formula that they use. When you submit your costs in excess of 75,000, which includes,
For one kid?
right.
A cost for one kid. I'm
Right.
saying, how many kids could we have that get more than $75,000?
Oh my
for
gosh.
services?
We have 500 students here, that 515 or something like that, students that are
That get
that are
more
special
than,
education students.
that get,
No, I'm not saying all of them do, but 515, I mean, I'd say probably 2/3 of that are over 75 for sure.
You go one-on-one.
I know under the
so when they
news,
move through the system, so you're saying it just self-perpetuates?
Yes.
Yeah, because you get new ones coming in every year. We've been consistent in terms of our overall population going back.
The trend is already.
Yeah, and that's actually on that enrollment sheet that I think I
I
sent
was
out
just
to you
wondering
guys.
why it went, I noticed in 06, 07, 08, it jumped sporadically.
Well, I'll tell you why.
Dramatically. Is that
Because in
better at the
08, 09, we sat down and took a hard look
Figured-
at special
yeah,
education,
okay.
said, are we maximizing the number of
Right.
dollars we could be getting back from
We
the
got
state?
better
And
at-
so
we got
you
more
saw
savvy.
it, I mean, a dramatic
Not because
change.
The kids, the composition of.
The composition of the
needs
students
is
didn't
not-
change. It was
Okay.
us doing our due diligence and actually
I would
making
think
sure we get
100
that.
is a nice even number.
100?
Is there
I'm thinking
any-
150.
Is there,
Anyone?
is there any way the funding can change for this
Like a given
at the
amount.
level
Why wouldn't it
from
be
wherever it
150
comes
if
from,
it's,
either state or federal?
7 years
Like, did he,
Change the mind about it.
it's a line item in the budget each year. That 9.6 million
So you're sorry that they.
And that
could
can't
eliminate that
change?
line item.
Well, it could.
I know, it's-
Just like everything else
Right.
could change every year with the darn budget that we get from the state. For me, it was, okay, do you account for it going forward? I mean, obviously, every year you're going to know, and you're going to pull it out at some point. But in terms of our forecasting for 5 years, you make assumptions based on what the information you have today. Next year, the law could change. Next year, the budget could change. Next year, the regulations could
Right.
change. And we'll have to adjust our budgets going forward to whatever those changes are. But for the time being, if we're trying to make decisions about taxes, no taxes, furloughs, no furloughs, I think we should know. I want to try to get as much accuracy in our forecasting as we can going forward. So
I'm comfortable with the 150 as long as I would think you could have a conversation with Shelley and say, do you know, I mean, if she knows that like 15 kids that left that we're over 75,000 and we don't have any more coming
In other
in.
words, if we had 15 that we submitted this year, and we know we're going to have 15 next
Yeah,
year.
right.
There's a glut, I guess, in the system. If it's obvious that, like, right now, the 10th grade has an extraordinary number of extraordinary payments.
Or whatever, but yeah, as long as we have the same, we're comfortable with it, we have around the same number.
Lauren, I'm just curious,
I
you
gotta be
said the
able to
window
get
is
numbers
November,
together.
February.
Well,
Yes,
When's the money awarded?
because we're maxing
right
out.
now.
Because it says.
Oh, so you don't get the money till the end
We're
of the year.
maxing out. I'll bet you if you actually did this formula and there was no cap, that would be the question. Where would we be?
Yeah.
Would we be at $500,000?
Yeah.
Would we be at 750,000, or would we be at 151,000? You know what I mean? Like,
right, well, or
but-
that, yeah, or that, I don't
So,
know.
well, I mean, this is, we're being capped. I mean,
So those are expenses we always have to pay in our budget before we get anyway, the slightest reimbursement for anyway. For people who want to take the budget down to zero, we just can't.
So, Lauren's real concern is it going to be in the budget or not? I mean, that's really.
If you got 5 years of data, I mean, I'm sort of comfortable with it as long as, like I said, as long as we have the same, we don't have any weird loss.
Say 100.
Rich, how do you
That's
think?
what you just said, that we're capped at 150, so
It's never gonna
even
be
if we
more.
lost a child or two, we're probably still at 150.
Yeah, I don't think, if the state keeps in mind, that's the real, that's the real.
Yeah, if they take it, they take it, there's nothing to do about it.
We have extra
So what's
money
the
in
recommendation for the number that goes in the budget?
this year.
You're not part of the committee, so it's-
Huh?
I said, I'm fine with 150.
Fine, too.
I'm all right with 150.
Consider it done.
You're all right?
Oh, I do not.
You're coming to the,
It's free.
you're coming to the dark side?
Well, do you want me to go, I can go 100 if you want to, a point or
No.
something for the vote.
150 is fine.
Sure, go 100, we'll have it split.
That's what I mean, we'll have it split too, we can flip a coin.
Okay,
Rock, paper,
one
scissors.
final item. I guess it's under other. I finally, yesterday and today, got the numbers for our insurance package. We have for years been with PSBA for our liability comp package and had a very good relationship with PSBA, good service from PSBA. The only thing that you changed 2 or 3 years back was your workman's comp carrier because PSBA was having some problems with the handling of claims, et cetera. So you switched to Highmark, okay? And now Workman's Comp came back this year and said, well, we'd like to get that business back. So they gave us a reduced cost, as you can see there in the middle column for 2015, of $88,000 against $92,000 for Highmark. Well, that would have been fine, except along comes Liberty Mutual out of Ohio, and they're soliciting business all over the state with school districts. They're the new kid on the block, so to speak. So they come in with a package where they say, okay, for the boiler coverage, we'll give you, it's a $10,000 deductible instead of a $2,500, but we'll include it in the overall property number, okay? Then they come down to the errors and omissions segment of it and say, we'll include that too. PSBA says, well, sorry, we got to hold for $19,500. So the bottom line is, do we want to maintain our relationship with PSBA? Do we want to go with the new guy on the block?
And it's
So-
apples to apples covered though.
The differences are in the 2 deductible items in the boiler.
I mean, it's a million E&O and a million E&O. It's you know, 500,000 on the auto, 500,000 in the auto.
Everything else, from talking to the broker, is pretty much apples to apples, okay? But the question is, if it were only, you know, $5,000, but the bottom line difference is what it is, which is you want to look at the Highmark because we're going to stay with Highmark on the workman's comp. So your difference is 243 with PSBA against 212 with Liberty Mutual.
Seems to me it's $30,000. I think you take the savings and go with Liberty Mutual, and I mean, we're members of PASBA. No matter, could we pay the $10,000 PASBA?
Yeah, that's on the agenda for the.
Right.
Yeah, well, I thought one of the arguments was.
I say if we don't take the
Well, that's
insurance,
because we
need to
rolled
pay
in
the-
with the insurance and it helped with the insurance. But now, you know, if we're no longer with PASBA for that, now PASBA obviously has other benefits in terms of board training and some other
Yeah, that's all
things that
listed.
go on there. But
That's all listed.
They also have our
Look at that
policy
competitively.
review.
There are other routes in
Yeah.
Harrisburg. There are support
But-
board.
but
I mean, yeah, I just wanted, I'd like to get the declarations sheet from Liberty Mutual, make sure that our coverage is actually apples to apples, that's all.
I can get that. Obviously, we will sign on, but the broker, I can get further details, but I want to put this on the agenda for Monday night so we can act on it because it's a July 1st renewal.
But this Liberty Mutual, that's not a startup company, that's Liberty Mutual, right? So
Right.
they have a track record.
They're obviously wanting to be aggressive in Pennsylvania.
And it could, 2 years from now, it could completely change.
1 year from now it could change. It gets depends if they fill their books,
They get
right?
aggressive, but also they go, oh, we bit off more than we can
Yes.
chew.
As
Oops.
long as we have board liability insurance, that's all.
That's right.
Yeah, really.
You know, insurance. We're good. All right. So thank you, Lauren. I guess if you can get your hands on the deck page and get it out to the board, you know, that'd be great.
That's all I have.
That's all you have. Okay, so one other thing Dave had brought to my attention, which I'm glad he did. I didn't have it on my tickler for now, but for later, was perhaps bidding out the auditor.
That your current contract for auditing services goes through this year with an option for renewal.
This year meaning July 1st, June 30th, right? Or are you talking about this fiscal year for 14-15?
For the June 30th, 15 is their final year of contract.
Right.
Because I went out for RFP, very nearly went out for RFP because I was told I couldn't find a contract. when I came a year ago.
Yeah, no, we had one.
So I put together the RFP, and I literally had it down here going out in the mail to a number of companies, including Irvine.
Yeah.
And I got an email from them and said, when do we schedule our pre-audit conference? And I said, you don't have a contract? And they said, oh, yes, we do. And they sent it right over to me.
Yeah, we did that 2 years ago.
So-
or something like that.
So anyway, at that point, it was a 2-year renewal. I will get that out and circulate it, exactly what that was. Because technically, we would be going out for the 2016 year end.
Yeah, well, we got to start that process now because
Yes.
we're going to have to pick who the auditor is going to be sometime this fall so that they're lined up for next year.
But I will get the renewal clause, the renewal option.
Yeah, I mean, get that out to the board, but, that contract should be up on our website somewhere. I mean, like, if it's not, we should scan it in and post it because everybody should know exactly what it is we're paying for the auditor and along with all of our other contracts that we do. Okay, well, thank you, Lauren. Any other input from board members on items you want us to talk about or look into? Yes, no, maybe? Silence is golden.
Oh, I'm sorry. I knew. Sorry, and it's not anything huge, but I've always thought that we've had something missing here with regard to grant writing. I always feel like we're missing out on revenue because we don't have, and not that I would want somebody full time or anything to do that, but I feel like we're missing out on applying for grants. I don't know if we are doing that, if there's, and with the situation we're in, I think we could use every penny. And I know that in my real job, I work with Schuylkill County IU. We work for them, and there's a grant writer up there. And I talk to her occasionally when I'm in there, and she seems to get a lot of money for these schools up in Schuylkill County. So I don't know why we couldn't utilize her in some capacity or find somebody else even to help us with grant writing. Or if that's something that the business office wants to do.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because that was on the top of my agenda, a long time ago. And Anne-Marie Trainer was sort of handling the grant stuff, but she was focused more on, what is it, the Title I, Title II, Title III type stuff. And we kicked this thing around, I don't know how many different times in REC, Revenue Enhancement Committee. And Walt had Mr. Sheehan had a relative who was a grant writer. And, so what we didn't want to do was hire a full-time person that went and got grants because we couldn't afford it and just adding more costs to our overall HR.
Right.
And so what we were looking was, are there grant writers out there that would work for free and they would get reimbursed based on the grants that they brought in. And we couldn't find anybody. I mean, we looked at a couple different brochures for people and somehow we just weren't, we talked to them, yeah, would you do it for us? Sure. And it's almost like the marketing thing that we do with the advertising. It's kind of like, well, where did that go? Are you really working for us? How do we get to the top of your agenda to make sure that you're doing it for Daniel Boone and not all the other clients?
Right.
And we just couldn't get that to work. So if there's an IU or somebody that you think we can take a look at and because clearly there's a lot of different grants that are available out there, and it takes a lot of time and effort for somebody to bird dog what those grants are we eligible, and then more importantly, know how to write the application in a way that you get awarded the grant. So that takes a special skill set, and I don't have any resources in my network for that. And
if I'm not mistaken, I thought 2 years ago, you or someone on the board at the time had talked about sharing a grant writer with other districts.
We did.
Yeah, I brought it up when I first got on board.
Yeah, I mean,
that's basically what you're saying. Right?
Yeah, this person, she works for the IU now and supports all the Schuylkill County schools.
I don't know if there's one at Berks County IU that we're not using.
So she's going to, I hate to say that publicly, but her intention anyway was to do this on her own for exactly what you were saying, and she would just take a percentage of the awarded amounts as her income.
And then she'd be willing to do it for us?
It's on
Yeah.
the administration.
Now, what she had said to me was there was some time there. She had, I think she was finishing a doctoral program or something like that. So, there was some timing issues there, but I'd be happy to talk to her again. And
We can talk to her. I mean, look, I was Googling grant writers. I was sending emails out to my network of friends saying, do you guys know of anybody that's a grant writer? And I had friends that were doing it for private schools out in Colorado and California, and I asked them, do you guys, fundraising essentially,
Yeah.
they're filing for grants. And I said, do you guys, and they said, no, we just do it in-house for the schools that we work for, and that's what they did. But they didn't know other people that they could refer me to, so.
Because that's a great setup, Brian. It's no cost to us.
Yeah.
And if they're working on a percentage basis,
They're
the
gonna
more
go
they
after the
get, the
grants.
more they make, and we're home free.
yeah.
I'll also, I'll send a message to Dr. Hackman, because obviously the IU, a lot of their money comes in via grants.
Yes.
So I'll ask her if they have somebody on staff that would, charge us on a per grant basis or something like that.
To be revenue for the IU. Great.
Okay, any other comments? That was a good input. Any comments from the public? Just state your name so we can catch it on the recorder and your address.
Terry Templin, 2032 East Main Street, Union Township, Douglasville. Surprised you say about grants. Are you aware there's an $8.5 billion grant being offered by the SDA for helping school lunch programs? And I'm looking at two people here that's in financing. Can they not help write grants?
I think the issue is time constraints. So how much time do these guys have in their day to dedicate to A, finding out what the universe of grants are that are available to schools, and B, filling those things out and making sure that all the different paperwork and everything else that goes along with that application is included in it. That's a lot of time. So
Now, see, years ago, we had one business manager, no assistants.
No, we did.
So,
We did. We had two.
no, well, believe me, we had Esther Weaver.
Well,
She might have had a few secretaries helping her, but believe me,
I don't know when that was.
that was back. yes.
Okay, well, we're a
And-
different school district now, so
Excuse me if I get this name wrong, but Theodore Roth,
Rathgeb.
Rathgeb?
uh,
Rathgeb?
Rathgeb, I'm sorry, I
All right, no
apologize.
problem. It's not an easy name.
You mentioned one thing, I believe, and I'm going to say something today that I did. We'll probably get a hit on my head. Probably put a hit on me. And that don't matter because I think I felt that out in the community before for various things I stood for. You said about raising taxes? Please do. We need it. It's time we cut the losses here and everybody come in and yell and holler and hoop again, but let's raise some taxes. Yeah, we're running too short, and back in 1978, the reason why I started coming to school board meetings, because we had a superintendent that everyone loved. He never raised taxes, but where was he taking it from? The general fund. And guess what? When he left, the first year he left, 1/3 of our auditorium roof found its way down onto our football field one fine Friday night, and we had no money to put it back on, and then we were in dire straits. Don't get there again. I mean, I don't know how much, I heard the gentleman, Mr. Poole, the other meeting said, I'm so glad you don't have this slush fund and keeping our money. Well, guess what? I think it's time to get a little slush fund. Not to use it for an extra $2 billion to throw on a stadium that they shouldn't have, but we need something to fall back on. And if we don't have it, guess what? We're going to be in a world of hurt.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Templin.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Any questions? Nothing? I give you guys kudos for coming and sitting through a long meeting. So thank you for coming out. We'll conclude this meeting. Thanks.